We stole a lot of the really good things out of Scum and kept them. We kept the idea of the chore tool, which I just called chortle, but they had cyst and bile and all these bodily humor flavored tools from Scum, cyst, bile, phlegm, mucus, and we kept there are analogs like the chore tool is the really big one, but it's the analog to what they did in cyst, which was the costume editor for all the other adventure games, and we kept those paradigms. You know, they manipulate 3D elements and 2D elements and movies and things together on one timeline, but that really is harkening back to exactly what they were doing in the 2D game. So
Lucas is remembered for the great art and the funny writing and all of that, but it's all built on
good
just
tech.
Amazing tech.
Oh no, all the sprouted sailors. But what happens to their souls when they're sprouted?
I was wondering that myself.
I think the idea was they take the flowers and bring them back to the land of the living. They like gets recycled.
They get
never really thought
they
through.
get reincarnated, which is sort of what you don't want to do here.
Oh, I wanted to also talk about, I think this was this may have been the first game, it may not have, but at LucasArts that I can remember, where you walk the character around and procedurally Manny's head is turning towards points of interest.
Yeah.
Procedurally.
It was the first head tracking, right?
With a computer.
LucasArts?
Oh, definitely at LucasArts it was, for sure.
I think that was because Tim didn't want to have like the UI highlighting stuff, right? Or he wanted to try something new.
Yeah, it was partial hint and partial probably red herring, right?
Oh,
Like show the player that they're point them in the direction of interesting subjects in the environment.
And I mean, it shows you everything you can interact with, and not everything you can interact with is a solution either, you know, so.
There's no UI in this game, if anyone didn't notice, and that was by design.
Just thinking back to the way that we all worked together at LucasArts, you know, the way the different departments collaborated. You know, it was, everybody just assumed that we were all rooting for each other and on the same team, and there was almost no sense of kind of trial period or nowadays and for a long time now in the video game industry, a lot of times when you are in a service capacity such as sound or audio, music, there's really a vetting period where what you're presenting is being vetted by the directors and the producers, and you need to hear back, and what did they think? Are they want to continue to work with us and that kind of thing? And that's fine. That's the way the film industry is, and that's the way things are. But back then, especially at LucasArts, it was not at all like that. Everyone just wanted to be working together. It was all one team. Everyone was facing in the same collaborative direction, and achieving fun results. And I think that creates an atmosphere in which people feel comfortable creating and taking risks. So it paid off, I think.
One weird trivia fact about the world that I learned, I saw a couple of Manny Calavera tattoos when I was at PAX, and someone asked me, why are there no Glottis tattoos? And I started Googling, and I couldn't find a single Glottis tattoo on the internet. I found many Manny tattoos. And so I don't know why Glottis... I'll just say that on the internet tomorrow.
That there
Hopefully
need to be more Glottis tattoos. I agree with that. The sort of whale sounds in the music are overblowing on the contrabass clarinet.
Oh, yeah.
Ralph Carney doing his little. That's the same thing with the birds that jump up at you and surprise you and squawk.
So this is like a play on moth navigation. Like they say that moths fly into lights because they're used to using the moon for navigation, and they're not used to electric lights. And so he's used to using the moon for navigation, but he's been distracted by this thing called the Pearl, and it's made him go march in circles all these years.
You know, Tim's really into Black Velvet.
Yeah.
And when I showed up my first day of work, there was a Black Velvet kind of canvas. I don't know what it was. It was like this kind of like you'd win it at the fair kind of thing. And it was like the Grim Reaper on a motorcycle with Mount Fuji in the background with these eagles flying out of it. Yeah. And it was just pinned to the wall above my desk on the project. And for the entire project, we really didn't talk much about it. It was just kind of there. And then when I moved on to the next project after it, I left my desk exactly the way I had found it, with the thing pinned up to the wall and the whole thing. And then Tim came and gave it to me. I still have it in my office right now. But he was like, that's the mural that binds together Full Throttle and Grim Fandango, because it's
Interesting.
the Grim Reaper on a motorcycle.
I wanted to point out that this octopus that we're seeing underwater was, I think, one of the things that Eric Ingerson took on.
I was going to say that, yeah.
And it is that back in 1997, that's probably like an animator's nightmare right there. I think trying to animate all those tentacles and not having a really intricate rig to work and keep all the curves in the arms. I'm not quite sure if Eric animated the tentacles frame by frame and bone by bone. I think he may have actually spent more time working on a rig to get what he wanted than he did animating.
Yeah, he definitely set that character up, and he worked on that animal, and then I think he did the spiders too, weren't we saying?
I think Chris Schultz did
Oh, Chris
some
Schultz
of
did the
but he may have rigged it maybe.
But Eric, he was really good at rigging and setting up the really complicated characters so that they would animate well.
I think I remember Chris Schultz having some kind of elation going on when he got the spider rig because he thought it was cool the way it worked.
And this is the part of the game I feel like is a lot more inspired by actually City of Lost Children.
Children, yeah, right.
That came out around that time, had a big influence on us. I think that's why we have a marching underwater diver too. Like there's a lot of scenes in City of Lost Children where there's a diver just marching on the floor of the ocean. It just seems so dramatic and just made the slow and steady slow and steady progress, but he was so heavy and thick.
No flying fleas, though.
No flying fleas.
Tim had the coolest office.
He did.
It was filled with like tiki lights, and it felt like it was like Christmas land. Not Christmassy, but it gave you that same feeling of decoration and hominess.
Yeah. I was going to say warmth, yeah. Hominess. There's a couch in there, which was always nice.
Yep. And I think I probably overstayed my welcome in there a few times.
Yeah.
I think we all probably did.
You never knew when you should leave because it was so much fun in there, but then it's like, oh man, he has work to do.
Yeah, it's no wonder he had to work through the night. It's because
We'd bother him all
his
the time.
office was like going to Disneyland, and you just sit in there and talk on the couch and just want to be a part of this this creation.
He had some old game consoles in there, and I would go and talk classic games with him because he knew that I was an enthusiast as well. So that was fun.
I think he should have made his office more boring.
He did spend a lot of time in that office.
How's his office now?
I've seen pictures. I think it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It's like a grown-up version of that office, maybe. He's still got all his Rubik's Cubes on his desk.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I forgot he was a master of the Rubik's Cube.
He is.
Really?
Yes. Don't challenge him.
Well, I would never.
Are the 3 stripes on the back of Manny's head, is that hair?
No, it's just a lazy design element to match the front of his head.
Oh, and the tops of his hands, remember? There's
Yeah.
little
It's
stripes
just
on there.
the
Yeah.
Day of the Dead decorations, right?
Yeah,
I never knew what it was. I just thought it was cool.
it's an Adidas homage.
Yeah, so people, a lot of people may know this already, but for those that don't, the game is just a big pre-rendered picture. There's no 3D geometry in the game that describes the walls and the doors and the tables and all of the props that are in the game. That's just a picture, a painting that's drawn in the background. So somebody had to go in manually and kind of make what we call walk boxes, but they're in 3D space. They're like a little model that just describes in 3D space where Manny's allowed to walk. And if you turn the background off, they just look like they're floating in space. There's nothing there. And there's boxes for walking. There's boxes for shadows. There's boxes for triggers that trigger like footstep sounds and things like that. But yeah, the image you see on the screen when you're playing the game, there is no real geometry there. So getting the illusion that Manny can walk in between tables and bounce off of walls and things like that is all smoke and mirrors.
I always thought those girls were so cute. I just had to be mean to them. Like once when my sister got her tonsils taken out, she had big puffy cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my aunt came to visit, and she goes, "Oh, you look so cute. I just want to be mean to you." And I never really understood it until we had these little baby angels in the game. I just want to just terrorize them so you can get out your scythe and scare them and do all these horrible things.
It's the Mr.
little
Bill and it's the Mr. Hands in all of us.
Angelitos is actually the little children in the cage. Comes from a term that it was a popular kind of well, it was traditional in Mexico to take pictures of your children, even if they were died very young.
Yes.
Like photography of little dead
it's a
children
whole
in a coffin.
genre. Yeah, it's.
I don't know if that
really-
happened in the States, but it was definitely in Mexico. at that
Mexico,
time.
yeah, I've seen those. I think you showed them to me actually.
And the word they use for children when they're young when they died is angelitos.
Oh yeah,
It's a dark game.
it is dark. See, I like that you still are not quite sure about Meche.
That happens a lot in those noir
No,
movies.
totally.
The-
It's like just like
the woman is like, wait, is
Casablanca.
she in leagues with a bad guy, or is she
Right.
being controlled and being blackmailed by the bad guy?
Yes, a testament to the fact that they're written by men.
Nervous laughter.
I love the pulling the stocking down of the leg bone being
That was
sexy.
our
That's
one
awesome.
cover image.
Yeah.
It was on a magazine, PC Games magazine.
Oh yeah,
That
I
image.
remember that. Yeah.
But what is that from? This is definitely
It's
a reference to Popeye.
And also, go ahead and scratch, right?
Let's go ahead and scratch.
And when Humphrey Bogart in Maltese Falcon, not Big Sleep, Humphrey Bogart is meeting. Lauren Bacall comes into his office and she sits on his desk and she crosses her legs and she's scratching her knee, and the camera is showing you this from a interesting angle, right? And then she sees that he's looking at her scratching her knee, and she covers her knee with her dress. He says, "Go ahead and scratch," right?
Scratch. I was thinking more of Popeye. Olive oil falls into cement, and she steps out of cement, and everyone's whistling at her because she has shapely legs. And
Oh,
the cement falls away, and she has olive oil legs.
Oh, I forgot that.
That's what I always think of when I think of the scene.
There it is.
I can't hear what he's listening. What is Domino listening to on his headphones in your mind?
Oh, it's not just what is there. We
You can actually hear
have
like
him
a little-
listening. He's listening to his own theme,
Bark.
and it's done as a headphone. We didn't mixed it so it would sound like headphones. It's very quiet, but he's listening to his own music. I was going to say about the music where he reveals the whole big conspiracy theory. That was a jam between the cello player and the contrabass clarinet player.
Oh yeah.
Basically, the idea was that since it's a whole complicated conspiracy, that they would just jam and jam forever on the same theme, kind of weaving it out.
This is where people nowadays would be like, Tim, the ideas you have here about this conveyor belt where you can switch directions and rip a chain with a scoop, it's really complicated, and we could eliminate a lot of work if we just cut this one puzzle. But this is like, no, we went all the way and we fully implemented exactly what I hoped would happen. The conveyor belt would reverse direction, chain would go up and down, Manny would climb down and against the force of water, bunch up the chain. This is all so complicated. Oh, and you create a little loop. I was like, this all makes sense in my mind, so the player will be able to figure this out. Like the way that you looped it over that boat. I don't even know if that would work. That's like when you whip a hose to like get it uncaught when you're watering the plants in the backyard, and your hose gets caught.
Right, yeah. Do a little whiplash effect, yeah.
So one of the things that was another technical problem that was really interesting was the save load, because I wanted to cut a bunch of corners on save load to just make it a little easier to implement. And we had talked about things like you could only save and load, or when you load, it would load at the beginning of a room and back up content a little bit, or just do it where it was a little bit more convenient. And Tim really wanted a really high fidelity save load. And I remember trying to talk him out of it, and he threw the gauntlet down, and he was like, if Manny's in the middle of a line and there's a puff of smoke hanging in the air, and I hit save, when he restores, he should pick up from the middle of that line where he was at, and that puff of smoke should be in the air. And I was like, all right, man, if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. And it was a big pain. It took a lot of work to get it there. that's the way the game shipped, and that's kind of you know, with controls and things like that. You know, Tim was pretty uncompromising and had a vision of what he wanted this thing to be, and you know, as much as we were able, we gave him what he wanted.
So this whole environment, I think, was worked on around the end of the game, and we had to bring a few other artists on at the end in order to get it all done.
Yeah. No, and then I kind of remember that towards the end, because it was just like a skeleton crew, because I think just the budget had gotten so big that I just remember Pete and a few other people working on it for a couple months or something.
Yeah.
While all of us had to move on to other projects.
All that water is running in the Rebel Salt engine. The game is running in the Jedi Knight engine, and the
Oh, that's right.
all the stream videos from the Rebel Assault engine.
That is right.
So we're compositing Rebel Assault technology on top of Jedi Knight technology, and then all the Lua scripting for the gameplays. Is that what comprised the Grime engine, which we never actually called the Grime engine at the time, but Brett wanted to call it the Grime engine. It was like
that's
Grim.
funny.
And in later, he's been able to do enough interviews where he's called it the Grime engine that people just call it the Grime engine. Now that's fine. It should have a name.
Everything should.
Those look like my sister's curling irons.
I was just going to say,
Like,
those things always scared me. They are truly terrifying.
the
Those
curling iron
grinder.
things?
No,
Oh, the grinders.
The grinders. The curling irons, to a lesser degree.
Those are based on my sister's curling iron. No, you don't call them curling irons. Curlers. Based on my
Curlers,
sister's curlers.
right.
And my terrible fear of curlers.
They're fearsome things.
The animation team was very green, and we're lucky to work under people like Pete and some other senior folks on the team, like Eric Ingerson and Mark Hamer. We came out of school learning traditionally 2D animation, and probably had about a month or two of work on Monkey Island 3, I think, which was still semi-traditional. And then this was our first kind of interaction with 3D and computers, and we struggled and watched Eric do the most complex things you could imagine.
It was all very new. And I think we had a couple of consulting sessions. This was back when we were still kind of connected to ILM, and so we had Kyle Balda, was a LucasArts alum and at the time worked at ILM. He came over and gave us some 3D pointers at a couple of points. We had some special private sessions.
I can't even imagine what was going through his head at this point, because just the size of this game, being able to absorb it all before it's realized.
And he always had a really good idea of where we were and what was going on.
Yep.
And we were talking earlier about how there really wasn't a schedule that I remember, an art schedule for this game. It almost seemed like we just all sort of chose tasks, and then we had Leslie sort of following up to make sure we were doing them in about as much time as they should take, or not getting bogged down or stuck.
One of the things with Manny's head and the look at stuff was it really meant that you couldn't put a lot of inventory items very close to each other, or limited the number of things in a room, because even though you could toggle through and he would look at things kind of in sequence, it could get tricky on if you put like 3 things on a table. Is he looking at thing number 1, thing number 2, or thing number 3? So that was an interesting thing, because Lucas was known for these adventure games were very dense. Yeah, lots of things to click on in the screen, and you really couldn't do that here. But the game doesn't really feel lacking for it.
I feel like that's filled in with dialogue. I mean, ultimately, you know, you'd have those Hunt the Pixel games. You have a million things, and you'd have to have one line for each thing. And with this one, it's more like there are fewer things, but there's more to say about each one, or more context, or Manny kind of thinking to himself about things. It's a little more ruminating. So I think it adds to the character, just in terms of how much you kind of understand Manny or empathize with him.
Reciprocating chisel. This scene is kind of actually right out of the Fountainhead. This really, I think it's Gary. Is it Gary Cooper or someone like that? He's doing this super manly, like drilling into this wall, and the love interest of it comes over and like is watching him, getting all aroused in a kind of a 1930s kind of way, and she's so mad that she's out riding her horse, and she slaps her riding car up onto her leg to show her frustration. It's this hilarious scene, but for some reason I really like this jackhammer that he's just going into this wall with. And so it's here, and it's very similar erotic content here between Manny and Chipito.
Yeah, it's like I can see the brotherly love.
One thing that was a little weird on animating all this underwater stuff, when you animated a little section like Manny jumping off the conveyor belt or climbing up a chain or getting dragged along by a boat or whatever, you would always try to add that element of the physics of being underwater.
Yeah.
And then seeing the harsh contrast of when you're back in interactive mode and we're still using the same animation of him walking above water. It was hard for an animator to get over that. These little things you can't let go of.
You would have had to do a whole new set of anims. Like,
Yes. And that, well, the other thing is, like, that may not have been the thing that would have stopped something like that. It could have even been like, there would be too much code required to switch a system or something. Like, who knows what the reason was. I remember being really, see how their hands kind of clip through their sleeves? I remember being really annoyed by that as an animator, having to settle to do it because you couldn't get the poses or the lines you needed without making things kind of collide. It's something we just had to kind of live with.
And something we still live with today.
that chain that's holding the ship, at one point we had to add joints to that because I think at one point it's animated and it kept crashing and we couldn't figure out why, and we eventually figured out that you couldn't have more than 99 joints in a rig in Softimage at that point, and it had like 100 joints or something.
No, but again, it's this funny thing when people, maybe see this stuff and they think of movies now that maybe look better, but, we were having to deal with a lot of limitations.
I'm actually really, really excited to see the remastered version because, you look at elements of this game that was made over 15 years ago, and visually it still kind of holds up to games that you can see today. So, curious about what it's going to look like after the Double Fine gets finished with it. Yeah. I think it'll be pretty special.
There was the elevator in my dorm that you could push open while it was moving. You push the gate open and freeze it in between floors and hang out in the elevator for no reason. But there was a little strip of metal up in the corner that the door would plug into when it was closed to know that it was closed. And we tried to get the elevator moving with the door open by sticking our fingers in this thing trying to trigger the little switch. I totally got electrocuted because it was like a live actual electrical current in there instead of
ouch.
So that's where that comes from. That little door closing thing, yeah.
From ill-advised college activities?
Drunken college dorm elevator near-death pranks.
It's funny, the casting of Manny was, it was tough because, obviously you have, I wanted to hire somebody who was legitimately Hispanic and not somebody putting on a fake accent.
Right, oh, for sure.
And normally in a sort of the casting process, you'd sit down with the project leader and you'd probably have 5 to 10 candidates that you'd be looking at, and with Manny we had 2, and Tony was more Humphrey Bogart, and the other actor was more comedic, and I was terrified that Tim was going to go the comedic route because I thought Tony was the guy, and
right.
I remember printing out resumes for the 2 guys, and Tony had a lot more experience. And then there was a really cool picture of Tony taken from Havana where he's sitting up at the bar and he just looked cool.
Yeah.
And I made sure that went in too. And so just to help kind of push it in the direction I wanted it to go.
That's good. It's the perfect voice.
Yeah, he's great.
It's hard to make them kiss because they have those.
They don't have lips.
Yeah.
They should have added like a knocking sound.
Oh, that would have been funny.
Awesome.
Bones kissing.
Yeah. Making out. Imagine what that sounds like with a bony face.
So, once in a while, if there was a solo part that we could get to be recorded by a real person, we would do that. But I don't know if you remember, we were kind of under a lot of schedule pressure with that.
I do remember some.
And people were like,
one late night or two. There was a late night or two.
And then there was like, you're spending $13,000 on live musicians? Are you crazy? So we were lucky we could do what we could do at all, but.
And look, where are those guys today? I don't even remember their names. And here we are. Here we are talking about Grim.
Exactly.
Those guys are all dead. I'm sorry. I mean, I hope they're dead. I hope they're happy spending time with their families and no longer working on games. Which I think actually is true.